Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello and welcome back to Truth in My Days radio broadcast. I am Dr. Adrienne Torres. Today, I will be discussing with John when we should be doing apologetics. John, on another program, you said that apologetics is a responsibility of all Christians. You referenced 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear. So, does that mean we always have to give an answer to anyone who asks us about our faith?
Actually, no. And this is interesting. In the NIV, this passage reads, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." Period. End of sentence. But do this with gentleness and respect. So the sentence ends with, "for the hope that you have," there's a period, and a new sentence starts with, "but do this with." But there's no "but do this with" in the Greek. And you see the same kind of insertion in the ESV where it reads, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." Again, there is no "do it with" in the Greek. And that's the problem, you see, because the way the translation comes out, it makes it sound as if you need to give your answer with gentleness and respect, when in fact in the Greek, with meekness and fear modifies ask. It describes the way in which people need to be asking you.
So the attitude of the person asking counts.
Absolutely. You do not need to give an answer to anyone who asks you, but only those who ask you with meekness and fear or gentleness and respect. There has to be some sincerity in the question, because there are people out there who are asking questions not because they want to know the truth, but because they're looking to start a fight.
So if it's not a sincere question, we don't have to give an answer?
Absolutely not. This is, in fact, what Jesus modeled in Matthew 21, 23 to 27, when the chief priests and elders challenged him. And this is the passage. "Now, when he came into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people confronted him as he was teaching and said, 'By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?' But Jesus answered and said to them, 'I also will ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, where was it from? From heaven or from men?' And they reasoned among themselves, saying, 'If we say from heaven, he will say to us, why then did you not believe him? But if we say from men, we fear the multitude, for all count John as a prophet.' So they answered Jesus and said, 'We do not know.' And he said to them, 'Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things.'" Now, why do you think Jesus didn't answer their question?
Well, it sounds like that those guys were not really asking a question and trying to seek the truth. They are reasoning in their heads because they worry about what kind of answer will be politically expedient. So maybe that's why Jesus did not answer that question.
Exactly. By asking that question first, he was able to surface what was really in their heart, what was really in their attitude. Were they interested in knowing the truth? Well, as they pondered that question, it really comes out. Had they said, "We believe the baptism was from heaven," then Jesus could have said something like, "If John's authority was from heaven, what did he say about me?" But that's not what they said. If they said, "We think it's from men," Jesus could perhaps have gone another way. But the crucial point is that they didn't give any answer. And they didn't give any answer not because they didn't know, but because they're just thinking of what's the expedient thing to say. In that discussion, they show that they're not interested in knowing the truth. And so Jesus will not answer that question. There's no point for him to waste time answering a question of people who are actually not seriously wanting to know the truth.
I see.
In fact, not answering those who are not sincerely interested in the truth, or at least reasonable enough that they might become interested in the truth, is a command. It's right there in Matthew 7:6. Can you read that?
Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under the feet and turn and tear you in pieces.
Yeah, there you go. We think, if we read 1 Peter 3:15, and especially with a poor translation, we think we're obligated to give an answer to anybody who asks you about Christianity, about your beliefs. But the reality is you're not. Giving an answer to hostile people is pointless. And in fact, it can end badly, as Jesus warns here. And it's a command then. Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine. It's not just a good idea, it is a command. The issue, of course, is how do you know? How do you know if they're sincere or not? Jesus could, of course, knew all men's hearts. He could know with certainty, and we can't. So I like to assume at the beginning that the person is sincere and we can give them answers. But sometimes it becomes obvious very, very quickly that they're not sincere. You need to look for things like that. Are they mocking? Are their questions, do they sound sincere, or do they come across like they're mocking you? Another sign is if you're asking them about their beliefs, you're asking about their response to what you're saying, will they give an answer? Is it a thought out answer? Or is it flippant? Or are they refusing to answer at all? A third thing you could look at is things like repeating a point they've made after you've spent time debunking and after you've spent time producing evidence to show that what they're saying is wrong. If they repeat that point, if they've not listened to your evidence or they don't care about the evidence, that's another good indication that they're not serious. Another one that comes up sometimes is blasphemy. They will use foul language or insulting terms about God because they know it will bother you. And that's another sign that they're not interested in a serious discussion. And so you're not obligated to answer always. You should try. That should be initial response to them. But once it looks to you, upon fair examination, that they're not interested, you can move on. You're not obligated to continue. Often you can't tell. Sometimes you can't tell for a while. I have personal experience with this back years ago when I was an engineer. I was working as an engineer in a company, and I was trying to reach my coworkers with the gospel there. In my years there, I think I probably reached about half of them, at least presented the gospel to about half of them. There are two particular gentlemen with whom I spent quite a bit of time talking. And both of them listened, seemed to be fair-minded in their discussion. But with each of them, our communication ended rather abruptly. With one of them, at one point, he finally said to me, you know what, I've heard what you have to say. I've heard it. I don't want to hear it again. If you ever talk to me about this again, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. Well, that's a pretty clear signal to you that you've done your job and there's no point to continuing. He's not interested. Another one, same kind of thing. It didn't go for so long with him before one day he said to me, do you know what? He said, my sister became a Christian and she tried to convert me. And I didn't talk to my sister for 2 years after that. So what do you think is going to happen if you keep talking to me about Jesus? So again, that's a clear indication he's not interested and it's time to move on. But it doesn't mean the effort is wasted. Sometimes you're planting seeds and seeds can sometimes take root and grow. And I say that by way of example, the second fellow who gave me the bum's rush, so to speak, I left the company, I was in seminary, and one day I got a telephone call, and to my surprise, it was this fellow. And he said to me, years ago, you were talking to me about Jesus, so I thought I should call and let you know that I've come to Christ, I've become a Christian, which was great news. I was very happy to hear it, and reminds you that your efforts are not necessarily wasted, even if they don't bear immediate results. Sometimes you're doing the planting, sometimes you're doing the watering, somebody else will do the harvest, and sometimes you do the harvest. But either way, you should be willing and able to give answers as to why we believe what we believe and they kind of have to pick and choose when and where to do it. And you need some discernment for that.
Well, actually, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we can see in our daily lives too, when we talk to people about certain issues, that some people are just not interested, whether it's about the gospel or other things. And it is time not to waste badgering them, continue to tell them. And in my own experience as a doctor, I often talk to people, well, do you want to stop smoking? And there are people who want to, and I can tell they're sincere and they need help. And then I will go on and explain more. But there are some people, they're just not interested. And in those cases, there's really no point. And I would say, look, when you're interested and you need help, let me know. And I think it's something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is something like that. I should add one more point here. What I'm talking about obviously applies to us here in North America, where we have quite a bit of freedom to preach the gospel. There are other parts in the world where you really have to be very careful, because you can face serious persecution, imprisonment, all kinds of consequences for preaching the gospel. So there you really do have to be very careful to pick and choose when and to whom you speak. And it's perfectly legitimate not to stay there when that happens, when you've reached the point of giving what is holy to the dogs, so to speak, casting pearls before swine. You'll notice that Paul and his team on their missionary journey, they would go to a city, they would preach the gospel. In many of these cities, serious persecution arose. And when that happened, Paul moved on to the next city, figuring he'd done his work there and it's time to move on. This is something that Jesus himself told us in Matthew chapter 10, verse 23. He said, when they persecute you in this city, flee to another. So you're not obligated. Once people are against you, once they don't want to hear the gospel, you're not obligated to stay there and keep speaking. You are free at that point to move on and find other people who are more willing to listen.
Thanks, John. It's good to know that we need to sense the attitude of the person who's asking about the Bible, about Jesus, about God. And I hope we will all be sensitive to that. Thank you for joining us for this segment about apologetics. Please remember to join us next time.
If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.